Why your New York City apartment isn't selling. You listed 3 months ago, you dropped the price, and somehow the offers coming in are lower than where you dropped to. That is not bad luck. That is a pattern, and it has a very specific cause. I've been selling in this city for 18 years, and the most painful conversations I have are with sellers who came to me after the damage was already done. They listed with somebody else, priced it too high, sat on the market, and now they're in a hole. It's very hard to climb out of. The good news is that it's entirely avoidable, but you have to understand how this market actually works, because it does not work the way most sellers think it does. So let's piece the puzzle together. Here's the reality of how buyers find apartments in New York City. The moment your apartment hits the market, the clock starts ticking. StreetEasy pushes new listings to the top of the search, sends alert to buyers who have saved similar properties, and signals to every active buyer's broker in the city that something new is available. That window, roughly the first 2 weeks, is when your apartment has the most eyes on it, the most serious buyers, the most motivated traffic. If your price is right, that's when offers come in. Sometimes multiple offers, sometimes above asking. If your price is too high, buyers look, decide it's overpriced, and move on. They don't bookmark it and they don't come back. They just move on. Now, here's where it gets painful. Once that initial window closes and your apartment hasn't gone into contract, something shifts. Days on the market starts accumulating, and in this city, days on the market tells a story, even when that story isn't accurate. Buyers start asking questions. Why hasn't this sold? Is there something wrong with this building? Is the seller unrealistic? Is there a building issue? None of these things may be true, but the longer an apartment sits and the more these questions form, the lower their offers get, because they feel like they're taking on risk. So you drop the price to generate new interest, and here's the problem with that. A price drop does not reset the clock. It does not make your apartment new again. The days on the market are still there. The history is still there. And the buyers who already passed on it are not necessarily coming back. You're now showing a reduced price on a stale listing, and that combination tells the market you're either desperate or the apartment has a problem. Let's talk about how buyers actually search, because this changes your pricing strategy completely. Buyers search within price brackets. They set filters, round numbers. If a buyer's maximum is 1 million and your apartment is listed at $1,025,000, they never see it. Not because they wouldn't want it, because the filter cut them off before they ever got there. This is why pricing just below a major threshold matters, not as a gimmick, as a practical reality of how search works. And here's something buyers need to understand too, because it directly affects the offers you receive. In New York City, any purchase over 1 million triggers what's called the Mansion Tax. That is a tax paid by the buyer at closing, and it increases progressively as the price goes up. It starts at a 1% of the total purchase price at 1 million and climbs from there. That means a buyer purchasing just over 1 million is writing an additional check at closing on top of everything else. That cash requirement is real, and it affects what buyers can actually afford to offer. So when you're pricing near that threshold, understanding the buyer's full closing cost, pictures matter. A good pricing strategy accounts for where the buyer is going to feel the financial pressure, not just where you want to be as a seller. Let's peel the onion on what I actually see happen when a seller chases the market down. An apartment is worth a certain number. The seller lists above that number, convinced the market will meet them. The first 2 weeks pass with no offers. They drop the price. By now, the apartment has been sitting for 5 or 6 weeks and buyers are suspicious. They drop again. Now they're at or near the right number, but the listing has accumulated weeks of market time and a visible price reduction history. Buyers who are still looking offer below the current ask because they sense weakness. The seller ends up accepting less than they would have gotten had they priced correctly from day one. And they've been carrying the apartment, paying maintenance, possibly taxes, and if applicable, a mortgage through the entire process. Every month, a Manhattan apartment sits unsold, costs money, real money. That carrying cost is invisible when you're focused on the list price, but it shows up very clearly on the net sheet at closing. Here's what the right strategy looks like. Price it correctly from day one, not where you hope the market is. Based on comparable sales in your building and in the area, current inventory, and how long similar apartments have been taking to sell. Use the first 2-week window the way it's designed to be. Maximum exposure, right price, clean presentation. That is when you have the most leverage. That is when multiple offers happen. This is when you have the ability to negotiate from a position of strength rather than desperation. Once that window closes, you are playing a much different game and a much harder game. The conversation I try to have with every seller before we list is one most agents avoid. What does this data actually say the apartment is worth? Not what you paid for it, not what your neighbor thinks it's worth. What are buyers in this market right now actually paying for something comparable? That conversation is sometimes uncomfortable, but it is the conversation that gets you to the finish line with the number you actually want in the timeline that actually works. No surprises, just a clean sale. If you're thinking about listing and you want an honest pricing assessment before you go to market, comment the word strategy below and I'll send you my seller pricing checklist. Same framework I walk every seller through before we list. Thank you.